Hi there, comrades. Melody here. Going to be doing something that I don't usually do on this channel, which is give a little tour of my bookshelves rather, to kind of give you a better idea of my wide pool of influences and things that I'm reading right now. So I'm not going to look at every single book on my shelf, but I am going to maybe pick out a couple and then set them aside and then talk about some of them individually. So let's start here. This is my shelf that's mostly economics and some history stuff. So over here we have a lot of stuff by the kind of social democratic, left liberal economist John Kenneth Galbraith. The first real serious economics text I read during my undergraduate econ degree was this one called The New Industrial State. So I am going to set this aside to talk about it in a minute. Then another book that's in here that had a lot of influence on me is Robert Heilbroner's Teachings from the Worldly Philosophy. So that's going to get added to the stack. It's kind of a intellectual history of contemporary economics. Here are some really great books on history from oppressed peoples in North America, and this is, again, not a super well organized bookshelf. I organize things pretty loosely, but not incredibly. So this book here, Transgender History, is not one I've gone through quite yet. I'm planning on doing a study group on it soon, though. This other book, The Democrats' Critical History by Selfa, is one that I talk about a lot, so I will set that one aside as well. The next shelf, we have the stuff from my physics and mathematics education. It's not really the focus of this channel, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. Oh, sorry, my camera's getting all shaky here. But I guess the ones that I liked the most were the legendary D.J. Griffith's Intro to Electrodynamics. This book is incredible. I love it. I will talk about it a little bit, so I'll set it aside. These also, I just wanted to highlight these real quick. These are called, it's a trilogy called The Theoretical Minimum. One's on general physics, one's on quantum mechanics, and the other one's on special relativity and classical field theory. These are really great if you want to get yourself into physics and you haven't, you don't have a huge amount of background. It's a good way to kind of get your foot in the door, get a taste for it. Does a lot of kind of good demystifying, and Taylor, great. Goldstein, graduate level text. Frustrating book. This one's pretty standard. James Stewart's Calculus, pretty darn good. The rest of these are pretty standard. Nothing particularly interesting. I did like Pinter's abstract algebra book. It was a lot of fun. It was the first and only class I ever took in like higher maths. I minored in math. I didn't get a full degree in math, but I took a class on group theory that was taught from this book, and I really liked it. But this isn't really a video for me to talk about my science and math stuff, so that's a little tour of my shelf there. Here is mostly books from Haymarket's Historical Materialism series. They send you a big old crate of super academic texts every couple months, and that's very much my style. So none of these are particularly stand out at the moment. There's a lot of them I haven't even cracked into yet. They just kind of live on my shelf. But I have been enjoying Howard Botwinick's Persistent Inequalities, so I'll set that one aside to talk about. And here we have my mostly Marx and Lenin shelf, Marx and Marxism. Got Capital volumes 1 through 3 over there, and the Grundrisse. It should be kind of a given that Capital is a big influence on me, but I'll set it aside to talk about. Rosa Luxemburg's The Accumulation of Capital. It's another one worth highlighting. Lots of stuff on Lenin and by Lenin. Of course, gotta talk about The State and Revolution. Very important book in the Marxist canon. I'll set that one aside as well. And the rest is, it's not all Lenin and Marx here. You see, I've got Heidegger's Being in Time, which, as you can see from where the bookmark is in it, I have barely scratched the surface, and frankly, I'm probably not clever enough to get through it just yet. This other shelf down here is, I've got a lot of magazines and periodicals, mostly monthly review, but I got a couple of IS reviews in here. Chris Harman's The People's History of the World. That one's worth talking about. It's pretty good. It's not nearly as intimidating as it looks. It's just long. These are E.H. Carr's first 3 of 14 volumes on the history of Soviet Russia, and they're great. I have finished the first one so far. I just started working on the second one. I'll set that one aside too, talk about it a little bit. And this book on fascism in America is one that I will be talking about with Brianna of Brianna's Library. Go subscribe to her channel, by the way. I'll be talking about this book with her in an upcoming video that her and I are collaborating on. And then got a couple more books on fascism in the U.S. Well, Alexander Reed Ross's is a little bit more general, but David Niewert's book. Got a bunch of stuff on the Russian Revolution, Alec Nove's An Economic History of the USSR. It's good, but I don't want to highlight it particularly right now, just in the selection that I'm doing. But anyhow, that's these 2 shelves for you. And over here we have the final 2 shelves. These are, by the way, not by any means every single book that I own. I have lent a couple of out. I like to do that. I like to... I'm somewhat of a kind of an amateur educator, both online and in real life, so I do lend books out. And so I don't have every single book with me, but this shelf here is mostly philosophy and psychoanalysis and all that stuff. I've recently finished The Parallax View by Zizek. I don't particularly care for Zizek as I guess for his often very spicy bad takes, but I think his theoretical work is interesting. Sorry about the shaky cam, folks. I'm doing my best here. And the rest is all pretty standard philosophy stuff, which I have read various parts of, if not revisiting them for the millionth time. This one is probably the most interesting that I finished, Frederick Jameson's Valences of the Dialectic. So Jameson is a very powerful thinker. Sometimes I think he's a little bit weak on certain historical things, but it's a good book. I like it. Very it'll make you do a big think, and that's always good. All right, and last shelf. This is my most disorganized miscellaneous shelf. Got some more of these historical materials and books. Got the big boy on the German Revolution here that I've been going over with the study group. As you can see, it's over 900 pages. It is a big boy. It's getting plenty of attention already on its own, so I'm not going to talk about it in this video. I'm just going to kind of show it off. It is definitely worth its weight. It is a doorstop of a book, and I like it. I think it's difficult, but it's worth slogging through. This is another one that I'm actively reading right now, Manning Marable's How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America. So I will set that one aside, and I'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah, I've got Paul LeBlanc's 3-volume set on Trotskyism in the U.S. I honestly, I'm probably going to donate these to a comrade who's interested in them, because I got these as part of the historical materialism grab box that they send out, and I really don't have much interest in the history of Trotskyism in the U.S. To be perfectly honest. It's not something I find particularly interesting. I just wanted to dispel something really quick. This book by Enzo Traverso is about anti-Semitism in Judaism. It's about anti-Semitism in the context of Marxism. It is not a Nazi book. You have my reassurances there. You can look it up if you want. That's all I'm going to say about that book. This book is a really engaging text on labor conflict in the United States in the 19th century and early 20th century that my good friend and comrade Labor Kyle and I will be working on and probably doing a video on together. It is just, you can't put this book down. It's so good. I'm going to set it aside. And I guess the last book I'll kind of highlight is Becoming Marxist. It's just a series of philosophical essays by Ted Stoltz. I don't know what to say other than it's interesting. There's some cool stuff in it. Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as physical copies of books that I have go. It's, again, not every single book that I own, but it's quite a few of them. And I've by no means read every single one. I've read quite a few of them, and I've partially read quite a few more. But yeah, this is kind of shows you the wide array of my influences and kind of where I'm coming from intellectually. I'm very much self-taught. All this stuff that I've come at I don't have a degree in philosophy. I have a degree in physics, and all this stuff I've kind of picked up by hand. I haven't, don't want to pretend that I know more than I do. I've just done the hard work of, sitting down with this stuff and learning it as best I can. Often getting help from some very capable and smart people who know a lot more than I do. So yeah, I'm going to go through the books that I picked off the shelf for us, and then we will wrap this video up. Okay, so here are a selection of the books I picked out. I'm not going to go over every single one of the ones that I picked out while I was giving you a tour of the shelves, just because I don't want to be here all day. But I will go over each of these in a little bit more depth, just so you have kind of an idea of kind of where I'm coming from generally on a intellectual level, and things that I'm thinking about, things that are in the forefront of my mind a lot. So let's go through these one at a time, and we'll talk about them. So this is The State and Revolution by Lenin, and it's a Marxist theory of the origins of the state and its nature within capitalist society. Not much more else to say about it than that. It's foundational to Marxist thinking, and should definitely pick it up and read it. And this is Robert Heilbroner's book, Teachings from the Worldly Philosophy, which is basically a history, intellectual history of Western economic thought, starting all the way back from the Bible and Thomas Aquinas, and goes through all the other thinkers, like physiocrats like Kenne, and then even talks about Marx, and then the marginalists, the so-called neoclassical economists who were foundational to what we now call neoliberalism. So that's this book. And this, of course, is Karl Marx's 1867 masterpiece, Capital Volume 1. I'm not even going to attempt to summarize it in this short little library tour here, other than to say that it is both a critique of classical political economy, so the works of thinkers like Adam Smith and J.S. Mill and whatnot. I guess more David Ricardo than Mill, but anyhow. Yeah, so Capital Volume 1, it's also an exposition of how capitalism works. Yeah, it's a big boy. Definitely a difficult book to work through, but I highly recommend doing it if you are serious about studying capitalist society. Next, we have The Democrats' Critical History by Lance Selfa, which is kind of going through the different ages of the United States history and talking about the role that this party has played throughout its history, and why leftists should be very, very militant in their struggle against the Democratic Party. They are not a leftist party. They are a capitalist right-wing party that masquerades as left sometimes when they feel like it, when they think it's going to get them some votes. And they fool you with people like Bernie Sanders there to herd you into the party and get you to vote blue no matter who. Anyway, so that's this book. I reference it a lot in my videos. This is The Coming of the American Behemoth by Michael Joseph Roberto, which, as the subtitle indicates, is talking about fascism in the United States in the early to mid-20th century. Brianna of Brianna's Library and I are going to be going through this book as thoroughly as a review, so I'm just going to give you a little tease right now and say that he focuses a lot on political economy, which is very much my style, in talking about the ascendance of both fascist movements and kind of fascist governmental structures in the United States during that period, and what we're seeing reemerge now. And this is E.H. Carr's classic, Volume 1 of his History of Soviet Russia. This one is kind of covers the initial phases of the revolution from February to October of 1917, and then talks about kind of the difficulties of the Civil War and how the kind of initial structures of the soon-to-be Soviet Union were conceived, trouble they ran into, and despite the fact that Carr is a liberal and he's not a Marxist, this is actually a very, what I would call a fair history. It's very even-handed and talks about Marxist theory in a very kind of dispassionate, but I think very honest way. So yeah, that's a little look at this book. Definitely worth checking out. And this is the megatome, The People's History of the World by Chris Harman. It's great. I mean, it's not a particularly deep history, but it's also very easy to read. Of course, it's covering the whole history of the entire world, I guess. Of course. Shout out to Bill Wirtz for that video. But as you can see, it really does kind of cover most of known history here. I would caution you that it has kind of a very Trotskyite bias, because he's kind of an old British trot and pretty hostile to the Soviet Union. But other than that, it's a very it's a great way to kind of introduce yourself to world history without too much baggage. Anyway, yeah, moving on. And this is Persistent Inequalities by Howard Botwinick. Howard Botwinick is a really interesting economist. He's talking about, in this book, kind of critiquing both neoclassical economics, which I mentioned earlier, and critiquing the kind of established Western Marxist intellectual tradition of monopoly capital, which is definitely the tradition that I stand in. I'm definitely kind of in the intellectual shadow of people like Paul Sweezy and Harry Braverman and whatnot. So he got some important critiques of monopoly capital in here. And he really stresses the influence of competition on the accumulation process. And yeah, it's this is a very technical book, and I don't want to get into it here, but I will kind of show off the table of contents. And yeah, maybe I'll do a video on this later. Botwinick is a very fine scholar, and I admire what he's doing with this book. So yeah, that's this book. And this is How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America by Manning Marable. Not sure if I'm saying that right. Oh well. Anyhow, I just started it. I just finished the introduction the other day. This is really excellent. It's kind of, its title is actually a direct reference to Walter Rodney's classic, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And so this is another book which I think is really important for our current time that we're in right now. Big social movements and eruptions in class struggle, which are very much tied in with structural racism and really understanding how race and capital intersect as a historical system, I think is important to figuring out how to move forward and how to build a revolutionary movement that understands this and can move past it as a system. Anyway, so that's this book. I'll put links to all these in the description, by the way, so you can track down yourself a copy if you want. And finally, I promised not to spend too much time on my my science and math stuff, so I just reserved one spot for my beloved DJ Griffith's Intro to Electrodynamics, which you definitely need some calculus and some vector analysis to understand it. But thankfully, the whole first chapter is all dedicated to review of that. So if you studied calculus or whatever once upon a time and you want to get back into some science, definitely this book. I mean, it's not a freshman level book. It's definitely intended for people who have some background. But it's so well explained, and let me see, one of my favorite chapters here is on I don't want to look at it right now, but anyhow, it's a beautiful book and has lots of worked examples, and I fell in love with physics through this book. It's so excellent. Really, I promise this wasn't going to be a video about physics, or it's mostly about my interests in the social science and humanities, but I do have a special love for physics and math, so just thought I'd spend a little minute on good old Griffiths here. And that's kind of everything, folks. Let me know if there are any books that you saw while I was giving you a tour that you might want to see me do videos about in the future or talk about on future streams or anything like that. I'm definitely planning on doing some of them, no spoilers, but yeah, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to make this show. Like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Marxist theory, history, and other perspectives. See you next time.